to Robot Unicorn, hosted by my parents, Jess and Scott. I hope you enjoyed the episode.
So, Jess, how do you want to start this episode? Because you don't like my intros, which is, you've said is only about the weather.
You said you were going to bring a dad joke, but...
Yeah, I forgot.
Okay.
I was busy being a dad.
Well, let's talk about that. You've been taking care of the children.
Yeah.
As have I. But we have had the kids home for the summer, of course, and not a lot of childcare. So, especially over the last few weeks. So we've been switching off, taking care of the kids, and finally have childcare again today. Not gonna lie, I was pretty excited to come into work and just exist without someone on my lap for a few hours.
Yeah, it was a bit of a challenge, but that's okay.
No, it was great. Like, I think for the most part, it was really good. But I think the last couple of days we were like, yeah, routine. It's more about routine for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like for us, the summer, especially this year for some reason, just feels like there has been very little to no routine.
I think because our kids are older, they're staying up later now.
Yeah.
That's the part that's killing me. It's like how...
Well, one of our kids is a little bit older.
Yeah.
And it's mainly our oldest.
It's mainly the oldest.
Yeah.
But they all used to have to go to bed at 7. But now they can all kind of manage till a little bit longer, except for the baby, aka the 3-year-old. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's the later nights, the fact that they could stay up later and we want to, right? Like, I want to do something like randomly go out for ice cream with her and like make those fun summer memories. But then you and I also haven't had childcare, so we're trying to catch up on work, which means that we're not starting to catch up on work till like 9:30, and then we're staying up late. So it's just been busy.
Yeah.
But for the most part,
honestly,
good.
The summer has been fun. It's just a little more chaotic than
just a lot of chaos.
We're used to or normal for us.
For 2 parents with ADHD who do really well with routine, the chaos feels like a lot sometimes. For me. I don't know about for you. But.
I don't mind it. It's more, what is the feeling? Just the guilt of not getting enough work done. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much what it is for me.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's lots for me to do, and it's hard to catch up.
Same. I feel that too.
Overall, I have actually been very much enjoying this summer, especially because we did 2 weeks ago. It'll be like a couple months after or before this episode is released, but we took just a staycation. So we just did day trips and stuff around the house, and I did a few projects around the house, digging in the backyard and all that kind of stuff.
The staycation was lovely. I actually feel like I'd want to do that again and just build that into our schedule. Because it was nice. We definitely got some stuff done around the house. We got quality time with the kids with nobody else around, which was really nice. And I know we had a lot of fun, like just doing like sprinkler and freezies in the afternoon, just like easy.
Yeah, and we went to Toronto
things.
for the day too, which was fun. We got to see a show with the kids, which they loved. I loved too, actually.
The Lion King.
Yep.
Yeah. So, all in all, it's been good. How's your heart today?
I'm going to hit stop on the record.
I'll always try and sneak that question in as many times as I can.
This episode is over.
This episode is brought to you by...
What?
I don't even know. Jess's heartfelt questions.
Yeah. Okay, let's get started then.
Yeah, let's.
I want to ignore that question and let's move into my question instead.
Oh, okay.
So let's start with a moment that I think most parents, especially parents as our kids get older, knows. So our child comes home from a friend's house and hits you with the classic line after you set a boundary or something like that. But their parents let them.
Classic.
It immediately puts you on the defensive. So as a therapist, what's the first thing you want parents to remember in that moment?
You don't have to change your rules or expectations based on what other families do. Right? So just because someone else's parents let their kids watch a certain show or stay up till a certain time or whatever it is, that doesn't mean you have to change your expectations. And like, you can take your child's concerns serious, right? Because sometimes there might be times when you actually do have an unrealistic expectation for your kid, right? And you do have to kind of, maybe, I'll give you an example. Let's say you have an 8 or 9 year old like we do, and you're still putting them to bed at 7 every night, right? And they're starting to crave, hey, I want to stay up a little bit later. And they say, hey, all my friends stay up till 8:30. Why do I have to go to bed at 7? Right? So there's a moment where you can take into consideration what they're saying and ask yourself, oh, is my expectation of my child realistic? Or maybe they're onto something. Then you get to decide what the rule is based on that, right? But don't just change your rules or dig your heels in because your child is pushing back. Also, I like to remind parents it's a child's job to push back. Like every child is going to push back. So it's not that your child is doing something wrong. Like they should question you. They should push back. And then you get to decide what you say.
Okay. I mean, that sounds good. I kind of like it a little bit when they push back. Not when it's incessant pushing back, but I appreciate a bit of pushback. Just to question the rules a little bit, because I hope they do that to us
and
everyone else in the world as they grow older too.
I want our kids to question us. And there has actually been times when they've pushed back on something and it's made me recognize that maybe we weren't being fair or our expectation wasn't realistic. Like bedtime is a good example where I feel like I would have just had the kids continuing to go to bed at 7 forever. And then one time I was talking to one of my friends about when her daughter goes to sleep and she was like, oh yeah, she goes to sleep at 8:30. And I was like, oh. And then I talked to another friend, 8:30. And all these 8-year-olds are going to bed between 8:30. And in my head, that was like way too late. And she'd been pushing back, right? And I realized, oh, maybe my expectation is realistic and I have to shift bedtime a little bit, right? So
yeah,
we can learn.
Okay. That's a whole separate thing because I question, again, just because everyone else is doing it.
Totally.
Does it make sense? Like 8:30, that still seems quite late to me for an 8-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
But it's probably also dependent on
their temperament, what they can handle.
Well, not even that, but they have school the next day or not. Right. And I mean, you want to stay relatively consistent, but let's say it's the summer months for us. So I personally don't care if they stay up a little bit later, as long as it's not affecting them the next day.
That's a whole side.
Yeah, that's a whole side conversation that we can have personally. So the research I looked at frames family rules not as just do's and don'ts, but as the primary way we transmit our family's culture and values to our children. So before we even get into explaining rules to our kids, why is it so critical for parents to first get a clear idea on their own family's core values or their North Star that they look to when they make decisions as a family?
This is actually the first thing I typically do with parents in my therapy practice. Like it's an exercise that I get parents to do for themselves is like write a list of things that really matter to the two of you, right? Or to you if you're a single parent. Like what values do you want to pass down? What do you look back at from your own childhood and you're like, I want to make sure I do this with my kids? Maybe it's about religion or beliefs or whatever it is, but it is important to be clear on what that is for you before you start making decisions for your children, right? And it can be something as simple as in our family, we really value honesty, right? Or we really value giving back to others. Because when you have those clear core values, any rule or expectation that you're putting into place for your children, you can kind of match that up to your values. Like, does this expectation I have of my kid, or does this way I'm disciplining my child, right? So let's say your value is like teaching your children kindness and respect and having a family that's known for being kind and respectful to others, right? So does the way I'm disciplining my child align with that value? So I think when we can have those core values in place, from there, everything else that we do, rules, expectations, discipline, we can match it up to that. And I think it helps like you said, it gives us a guiding principles for everything else that we do.
My only issue with that is, I guess, how one would define kindness, right? So, it's a whole conversation you have to have as parents for your kids, because I can imagine some people could very easily define kindness as being incredibly strict and restrictive on their children, because they think that that's the kind way, like that's being kind to my child.
Yes.
When it may not be the best way for your child to develop.
Yes. Yeah. And I do think this is where what we're doing on the podcast or the education that we provide parents is also important, because we can't just necessarily place an expectation on our child or say we have a value without also looking at, okay, well, developmentally, is this appropriate for my child? You know, what does the research say about the long-term effects of acting this way towards my child, right? So there's always nuance. You can't just say like, oh, well, these are my values, so my child has to do it. It's not that simple. But I think a lot of parents just have not even had those conversations, like even about things, let's say about like money, like what kind of values do I have around money? How do I want to teach my kids about money? Or how do I want to teach my kids about giving back to others? Or even values like gossip. Like, what do I want to teach my children about the way I talk about my friends in front of them? Right? There's all these things that I think if we can just have some of these conversations with our co-parent or our partner, I think it can be really beneficial before you start putting rules in place in your home.
So I was quite fascinated by the developmental psychology behind a child's sense of fairness. Because I looked into that.
Okay.
And the research seems to show that infants as young as around 15 months expect things to be equal already, which is pretty young. So when a 5-year-old screams it's not fair because their sibling got a bigger cookie, what's actually happening in their brain? Like what are they thinking in that moment?
I have a whole chapter about this in my book, actually.
Oh, and sorry, there's a second part to that. Is it pure defiance, or is there something more fundamental going on? Which I know the answer, but
I think kids just have this innate sense of understanding injustice, you know, and even if the injustice as something as small as, wait, he got a bigger half of the cookie than I got, right? And I think as parents, we say, oh, come on, just eat the cookie, you know, don't worry about it. But I think that there is a wisdom to the way that our children see the sense of fairness and inequality or injustice in these little things that we don't necessarily want to just skip over or kind of force them to grow out of, right? I think children have such a great way of understanding when something doesn't make sense or isn't right, and they'll push back on you. And like you said at the very beginning, like, is that wrong? I don't think it's wrong for a child to push back and be like, this doesn't seem fair, this doesn't seem right. That doesn't mean that we have to make all these changes every time they say it, but I do want to equip parents to help their children keep that voice of injustice and keep the ability to stand up when they see something that doesn't make sense to them or that isn't right, and to ask questions about it. And it starts in those small moments when they say, wait, it doesn't feel fair that so-and-so gets to stay up late, or so-and-so's family is okay with them watching this show, right? I want our kids to push back and question these things. I want to help them preserve that sense of injustice that they have, or that sense of... I
feel like it's more critical thinking than
critical thinking, right?
Injustice necessarily, right? And I feel like they're noticing differences, and they're able to see that there's, like, at this house, we do things in this way, and at our house, we do things differently. And why is that? I don't get it. It doesn't seem fair. Right.
And I think we have this tendency to be like, I said what I said. This is my rule. It's my way or the highway, you know, because that's easier. Mm-hmm. But think about the long-term impact that has on your kid if every time they bring something to you that doesn't feel right or doesn't feel fair or that they just aren't sure about, and you just say, because I said so, you know, this is the reason. We make our kids stop asking these questions, but they're really important questions and will serve your child well through their life if they're able to continue to be curious about these things and ask questions.
Mm-hmm. I mean, one of my core values for our family is critical thinking. Mm-hmm. I want to instill that in our kids and our family life. And I feel like pushing back a little bit and questioning things it's a good way to force every one of us in the family to constantly think about why we make the decisions we make and if that actually makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, if the outcomes even make sense for us. Like restricting our kids from watching a show, what's the underlying reason for that, right? I want to be able, for us to be able to say there's a legitimate reason for doing this and explain that to them in whatever age appropriate ways, what they can understand. But I do want their questioning to even cause us to think more critically about everything too. Because you even notice, I don't know, something as simple as going on walks with our kids over the past 8, almost 9 years. I've noticed that the saying "stop to smell the roses," like they're legitimately doing that. They're stopping. And then that has caused me to think about everything differently. Even something as simple as our daughter asking about how a light turns on when you hit a switch on the wall. Like, how does that make sense? Why is it doing that? It just, I don't know. It has made me think through everything differently. And that's, well, I mean, again, this is one of my core values, is the ability to think critically. And you kind of see that in how children ask us questions, because they may legitimately just not understand.
Right. And they want to understand.
Yeah, they want to.
And I want to preserve that in our kids, the ability to want to understand something, to feel confident to ask a question, and to be like, hey, or when they notice something isn't fair or isn't right, to be like, why? Why is this so? And I just think so many of us lose that. And as adults, even, we're afraid to ask those questions, right? And we feel silly for asking a question, or we feel like, oh, we should just know everything. And I feel like we could learn a lot from kids and their ability to ask questions, but it makes a lot of us feel uncomfortable. And also it creates more work for us as parents. Like, it's easier to say, because I said so, end of story, because then we don't have to actually critically think about, well, why do I have this rule in place? Right.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes back to, again, discussing as a parent, or if you're on your own, thinking through, writing it down, what are my values? What do I want to instill in my children? Because I think if you can think through that and have good reasoning for why you have these values, then it's a lot easier to answer why our family does something different than another family.
Yeah.
And why, it might not feel fair, but these are the reasons why we do this.
You know, what's coming to my mind a lot as we're talking is like gaming, social media, TV shows, right? Like, I think a lot of parents, like, that's where you're hearing a lot of pushback, right? Like, well, why does every other kid get to play Roblox online, right? Or why does every other kid get Snapchat at 10 years old and I don't get it, right? And parents are going to definitely, especially as their kids get older, they're going to get this pushback from their kids. And it's going to be easy to say, well, because this is our rule, because I said so. But if you can do that work on, well, these are our values as a family. This is really important. One of our values is protecting you guys. And I don't feel like I can do that when you're on Roblox talking to strangers online. Then you can have a much deeper conversation with your child and truly get to the root at why this rule is in place versus just a blanket. Like, I'm your parent and I said so, which is probably going to make your child just want to sneakily go about.
Do it even more.
Do it.
For sure. That would have made me want to do it even more. Okay, let's talk about what's called the knowledge behavior gap, where a child doesn't really understand and their behavior, or maybe they do understand something, and they still can't actually execute on what they understand. Right. So apparently it is possible for kids as young as about 3 to tell you that they should be sharing equally, but they won't actually do it until they're around the ages of 7 to 8, roughly, which I think is hilarious, because you even see that in our toddler. We're starting to see that shift in our 5-year-old already, that she is able to do things a little bit more fairly, but it's still at that age, the research shows that kids are just more egocentric. They can only really understand themselves at that point. So can you unpack this for us?
This is one of my favorite things, because parents will always say, let's say their 4-year-old. Well, my 4-year-old knows it's not okay to hit. He'll say hitting's not okay. But then when the moment comes and his brother takes his toy, he just hits his brother. And I'm like, parents will be like, I don't get it. Like, he knows he can say it, he can do all the coping tools, but in the moment he can't, right? And that is just about brain development. It's just that they can theoretically know something, but their body doesn't maybe have that connection. And so in the moment, their body still acts out and their body still hurts another child, right? And I actually think one of my favorite examples is when our middle daughter was probably like 4, she got this phrase probably from preschool, like sharing is caring, something.
yeah.
Remember that? And so she would always want to share stuff with me, right? So let's say I have like a drink of like soda water or something. She'd come up to me, Mom, sharing's caring, right? And I'd be like, yeah, okay. Like, I don't really like that phrase, but whatever. Right. And then she'd want to share something with me. And then I just remember one day just laughing because she did not want to share something, like no matter what, with her sister. And I just said, I thought sharing was caring. And she was like, no. Just like in that moment, it didn't matter that she knew this cute little catchphrase and she had used it all the time with me. Because when her brain was that dysregulated and that stuck, it doesn't matter what they know. Their body just has a different way of dealing with things, right? And that is such a great example of that knowledge behavior gap. And I think that's where a lot of parents are so hard on their kids because they'll be like, you know how to take a deep breath. You know hitting is wrong. You know you can't call me stupid, whatever it is. So why are you doing it? But we have to understand that in those moments, knowing and doing are two different things. So I love that you brought this up because I find this very, very fascinating and game-changing when you can understand.
Honestly, yeah, reading it in the research, I could just see our kids at those stages. And I was laughing while reading the research just because I can see in our daily life that happening. And I feel like talking about that knowledge behavior gap, it could definitely save parents a lot of frustration trying to reason with a preschooler. Yeah,
and I say to parents, like, because they'll be like, well, one time he took deep breaths and he didn't hit.
Yeah, right.
So he can do it. And now I hold him to that standard. It's like, okay, one time when the conditions were right, he had a perfect sleep the night before, he had a nice big breakfast, tons of connection, like the environment was just so that one time he could use a deep breath instead of hitting. That doesn't mean that is going to be transferable to every single other time. Yes, he can do it when the conditions are perfect, but like we have to give our kids some grace too and understand that their brains are developing and it takes some time.
Well, that goes back to the episode where we talked about that, right? Their brains are developing and different parts of their brains are developing at a different rate. So they may be able to think through things more logically and they might have a smaller knowledge behavior gap at certain points. And then all of a sudden they hit puberty and it expands again. And I don't know, I find that very interesting and kind of comical a little bit.
And I mean, don't you think the same for adults? Like,
we're
a lot better at it, but how many things do we know and not do, right?
Yep.
Like, I know I shouldn't watch shows till 11 o'clock at night. Just go to bed early. That doesn't mean I do it when I'm tired.
Absolutely not.
And don't want to get off the couch to go to bed, right? Like,
you're almost too tired to even get off the couch, so you just stay on the couch. I know.
We hold our kids to sometimes a different standard than we hold ourselves to.
Honestly, just letting you know, everyone who's listening, this is a great segue into our next episode where we talk about parental phone use. Mm-hmm. Because I think that's a big part of that as well.
Yeah.
Unreasonable expectations when we ourselves can't even hold
we
ourselves
can't even
to
do
the same standards. Okay, so the research that I found made a powerful distinction between rules in windfall situations where like all of a sudden one person gets a lot. Like a windfall is when an example is when you win the lottery and you get a windfall of cash or something, right? Versus collaborative situations where you're working together to achieve a certain goal and you get more equal split of things. And it noted that even toddlers will actually share rewards equally if they worked together with others to get them, which I found quite interesting. I mean, it kind of makes sense. We see it with our kids too. They'll be more likely to share when they work together on something. So how do you think parents can apply this concept to potentially reframe a bit of family life so kids feel less like employees following orders and more collaborative and like they're part of a team, or like we're a coach and they're part of our overall team and we win together?
Yeah, I feel like that's a metaphor we've used a lot, right? That we're coaching them versus like just, telling them exactly what to do all the time. I think it makes sense. Like when your child has buy-in or they feel like they have a say, they feel like they have some sort of voice in the family system, they're going to be a lot more likely to want to engage in the expectations or the rules that you have. And it's kind of what we were talking about, where if you just have a rule like, hey, no roadblocks, that's our family rule. Like done. But you never take the time to explain, to talk about why, to get your child's input and make them feel seen and heard. Your child's going to find sneaky ways to do the thing, right? So it comes back to this relationship where your child has to trust that you have their best interest in mind, right? And that is done not just in the moment when you're setting a rule or expectation for them. That's your whole relationship with them, right?
Yep.
So they need to know that in general, their parent always has their best interest in mind. And if they know that, then they're going to be a lot more likely to trust whatever expectation or rule that you're putting into place. But also if they feel heard and they feel like they have a say and they feel like they still belong in this family, even if they disagree with your rule or their expectation, you're also going to have a lot more buy-in from them. Mm-hmm. Versus if it's this, like it still should be a hierarchical system where like the parents get the final say, right? Like that is important. You're not their friend. You're not like their BFF kind of situation. I think we are seeing a lot of that where parents don't feel like they have the final say and they just kind of listen to whatever their children are saying, thinking that that's going to strengthen the relationship. Like your child does have to trust that at the end of the day, you're the leader, right, in the situation, but they have to feel heard and they have to feel seen and they have to know that when they have pushback, you actually take the time to consider what they're saying.
Yep.
And truly consider, not just like, brush them off all of the time. So I think that that's the piece that's often missing in these discussions. And I think if you look at the old school way of parenting, it was like my way or the highway, what I say goes, you don't question authority. Some of the struggles we're seeing right now are like, we almost let kids question us so much that we don't feel confident in our rules and we don't feel like we get the final say in our home, right? So we want our kids to feel so loved and seen and heard that sometimes we let them call the shots. So there has to be a balance in the middle. And I think that's a nuanced conversation that's kind of hard to pin down exactly. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I mean, like an easy example I could think of is, let's say for dinner, we explain our rules or the boundaries that we have to hold. Like we want a dinner and it needs to include a certain number of vegetables or something like that and a certain amount of food that's going to fuel us the best, but they get to help us choose. So they get to help us choose and collaborate on what we're going to eat for the week. Mm-hmm. So we'll talk to them about, okay, what do we want? What are we looking for this week for food? Here's what we need to make sure we include. And so that would be a more practical example for me of how we can collaborate, make them a part of the team, knowing that here's the rules that we have to play within. How do we get to that point? And here are a few of my ideas for how we can do that.
Yeah. And even along those lines, like even a more, like even less collaboration that you could have, but where your child still trusts your leadership could be, so our family value is we have dinner together whenever we can, right? Like we try and have dinner every night. Something that is important to us as a family is that we have nutritious food on the table, right? Certain balance of nutritious food. Now, we know that there's certain things our kids don't like and they're not going to eat. So we're not going to put that on the table every single night because our child's going to be like, well, why would I want to sit and have dinner with my parents? They know I don't like this food, yet they're forcing me to eat it every single night. So as parents, what we would do is we would just take into consideration, I know that these are the kind of things our kids will actually eat. It's part of our value as a nutritious dinner. So we're going to incorporate that in the meals that we have this week. Right? So that's without ever talking to your kids about it.
Yeah.
You're finding a way to make them feel seen and heard. And then maybe it's like, okay, one night a week, kids choose what we have. So it's
always pizza in our house.
Oh, it's going to be pizza. Yeah. Or mac and cheese maybe.
Yeah.
But there are ways to be collaborative and help your kids feel seen and heard that don't even involve like asking them for their input. It's just, that is what being a loving leader or a good coach is all about, is taking into consideration
the needs
of them, and then making expectations and rules that take those things into consideration.
Yeah, and honestly, like I would say, our kids are not their children. They don't like eating everything, which apparently, I have to research this more, but apparently your taste buds change over time, so you actually taste things more intensely when you're younger and it becomes less intense as you get older.
Oh, that's really interesting.
what you found. I have to look into it to make sure, verify. So
Fact
take
check.
that with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
But then it makes even a little bit more sense. They're a little more sensitive to the tastes and textures of things. And I know I was as a kid too. And now what I like to eat has changed quite a bit. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like I actually don't mind including them a little bit as long as they're aware that we have to include certain things in the meals.
Yeah. Oh, I don't think it's wrong. I'm just thinking for the parent who's like, I don't have time to include my
fair
kid
enough.
and everything.
I mean, to be honest, for this week, I planned all of our meals at like 5:30 this morning.
Yeah.
So yeah, like they're not awake. I'm the only one, and I had the time to actually think through the week what we're gonna have.
But as you plan the meals, you thought of what will the kids actually eat,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Not just what do I like, what does Jess like? You thought, what will the kids actually eat? And to me, that is being a collaborative parent without even talking to your child.
I mean, they saw it on the our family
They're pretty
calendar, and they
excited.
were quite excited. So
On that note, I want to mention another thing that I think kids push back on a lot, which is like extracurriculars, or at least we get that.
pushback.
Like they
in what
want
way?
more, right?
Oh, I see.
So
Okay.
for example, it's like our daughter, well, so-and-so's in gymnastics and another sport. So I want to be in two sports, right? So that's where, okay, like right now our family value is we don't want too many extracurriculars. We don't want to make things too busy or chaotic or whatever for our kids, right? So we're allowing them one extracurricular at a time, right? But if it was up to our oldest, she would have two extracurriculars and she wants to go to this girls group in the fall, right? Like a girls club. And I'm like, hun, that would be 5 nights a week. If you did that 5 nights a week, you would be busy. That's against our family value of having rest time. It's rest time is really important to us because you need time to, do your homework, to relax after school, to be with your siblings. And so I explained to her that actually, like I hear her and I hear her desire to want to do all these extracurriculars. I understand that her friends maybe are allowed to, and that's okay. It works for them. And that's not our family value. So we're not going to be able to do 3 extracurriculars in the fall.
Yeah, right.
Right. So I think and then we talked it out and be like, you're going to have to make a choice then of what you want to do. And so I think that's another way, like another example of their families do that. That's okay for them. Right. And that doesn't mean that you're going to go and do 5 nights of extracurriculars a week.
So that actually, we've already been kind of talking about this, but I wanted to get into the how of doing this. And the research suggested a strategy of offering choice within boundaries, which we're just talking about. So can you give us a real world example of that situation with our daughter? Mm-hmm. What did you actually say to her?
Like I just said, I said, listen, Dad and I are not okay with you doing 5 nights of extracurriculars a week. That's not going to work for our family. And that goes against what's really important to us, which is, yes, we want you to try new things. We want you to get some experience with some different things, right? And it's really important to us that you do have time to rest after school. You have time to do your homework. You have time to reset for the next day. You'll have no time with your sisters if you do 5 nights of extracurriculars a week. And for our family, it's not going to work for Dad and I. We're going to be exhausted taking you to all these things, and that's not fair to you or to your siblings. So I started there with our values. And then I said, and I hear you. Like, I understand you want to do karate, this girls club, and you want to do gymnastics. You want to do all of them. We can't do all of them. So I'm going to need you to think about what it is that you really want to do in the fall. Like, we're okay with you doing one sport. And I want you to think about which one you want to do and why that's going to be important to you. Right? And I said, you don't have to answer me right now, but that's what Dad and I are okay with. One extracurricular, right? Yep. And so she said she would think about it and get back to me. And then a couple days later, she's like, I thought about it. I want to stick with karate. I said, okay, like what made you think you want to stick with karate, right? And then she had a whole bunch of reasons why she wanted to keep doing karate. And then she said, but can I sometimes maybe do gymnastics if there's like a special, like next week she's going to do like a gymnastics camp for the summer, right? If there's like a special gymnastics thing I can try, because I do kind of want to just try it out. I said, that's fine. Like we can do like a random Saturday here and there or, gymnastics camp in the summer. So we came to a place where she understood my concerns, our concerns, and she had some choice, but they were within boundaries. And I felt like I stayed true to our family value of making sure that we had that downtime.
Yeah.
And being fair to every child in the family. Because I also said, we can't offer this to your sisters too. Like, there's no way. Like,
Yeah.
we can't physically be in a million places at once.
That is definitely one of our values that we've talked about for a long time, that we're not going to be the family that's on the road constantly trying to bring our kids here and there for all these different sports and extracurricular activities. Like, that's not going to be us.
And it's hard though, because the opportunity is endless for all the things that they can do, right? She's like, she does do piano lessons too, but it's at school, so that helps.
Yeah, that's helpful.
But like, she's saying, I want to do singing lessons, piano lessons, gymnastics. I would love to do dance. And that's her personality. So
She's like me in that way, where there's an infinite number of things that are interesting to me. It's more, I have to focus on, okay, what can I actually do with the time that I have?
Yeah. So, but I feel like that's a really good example of her telling me about all these friends who do something every single night, and us being like, and that's okay for them, and that's not our value. But because we've already had that conversation, you and I, it made it a lot easier for me to tell her no and explain why. But if you and I had never established what our boundaries were going to be or what our expectations were in terms of extracurriculars,
Right. Well, and she might
that could have been really hard.
She might have gone to you and then come to me right after and asked, Dad, I want to do this and this and this. And I'd be like, okay, yeah, sure, no problem.
Right.
If we had never talked about it too.
But I was very clear that you and I were on the same page.
Yeah. I would never have said yes to that, but.
Yeah, I know you would never have said yes. But that was important to me to be like, Dad would give you the same answer.
Yep.
Right? But I think, so another practical example could be like TV shows. You know, we hear from our kids like, well, my friend watches YouTube, or, you know, like this show on YouTube, or this kid, when I was at the doctor's office, they had their own iPad and they were watching this. You know, like, we'll hear things like that too. And again, it goes back to, okay, that's okay for them. Like, we don't know their situation. We don't know the conversations they've had with their parents. This is our family rule, and here's why. But yeah, of course, this comes up all the time.
The research highlights how communication needs to change as kids get older, which makes sense. So a conversation with a 5-year-old about rules is very different from one with, well, even our 8-year-old, but let's say when she's 12, it's going to be even more different then. So could you walk us through a scenario, say a rule about screen time or something, and show us how you'd explain it to a younger child? So let's say our middle daughter versus an older child. So assume our oldest is 12.
I think the younger they are, the more direct we probably are, and the more control the parent has, right? In terms of like physically setting that boundary, right? Like with our 5-year-old, we can easily just be like, you don't have an iPad, we're not buying you an iPad. And like, you can only watch shows on Netflix or whatever. And we just like don't even have YouTube on the TV, right?
Yeah.
Like, it is a lot more physical, and they don't have the ability to try and change that, right? And I would still explain my why to a 5-year-old, but I probably just keep my explanation short. I would follow their lead. If they have more questions, I would try and answer their questions honestly and factually, right? And the one thing that will always remain the same is I'll always see and hear whatever concerns that they have. Not that that changes my boundary, but I'll make sure that they feel listened to and heard. As they reach that 12-year-old age, what I always hear from clients is like, who were very, very strict when their kids were little without explanations. It's like, well, I can't send them to timeout anymore when they don't listen to me. I can't just yell at them, or I can't take things away because they just find an iPad, right?
Yeah,
and they
right.
just take it. Or they go to school and they use their friend's phone and download Snapchat on there, right? Like, when your kids become 12, the discipline that you used when they were younger and the relationship that you built, it really starts to matter. Because if you've built this foundation where they know they can question you, they know they can ask you their questions, you know they can push back on you, and you're going to hear them. At 12, they'll still push back on you, but they'll know that you have their best interests in mind, and you'll be able to have those deeper conversations about why. But if their whole childhood was just because I said so, or if you don't listen, you're going to time out, when they become 12, they don't feel that sense of safety that they can ask you those questions, and they often will just go do it on their own, right? And I think 12 is actually the age where we really see these discipline that we used in the younger years, we start to see the impact of that.
Yeah, it makes sense. Again, going back to the brain science behind all this, they're not really, they're emotional. The emotional part of their brain is controlling them a whole lot more than the logical part of their brain, right? So it makes sense that if they feel emotionally safe with you, that they're more likely to then listen to you, even if they're still emotionally charged.
Right. They're still probably pissed off at you.
Yeah, 100% they will be.
Right. And I think as parents, we need to be okay with that, disappointing our kids and having them mad at us. And if you could never deal with your child being disappointed with you when they were 3, 4, 5, and 6, right? And you just said, okay, fine, here, have the iPad, do this, whatever. When they're disappointed with you in the teen years or tween years, it's going to be really hard. Like, we have to teach them how to learn with, or how to cope with this disappointment in the earlier years.
Yep. I think that makes sense. I'm going to skip ahead then. So I want to push it back a little bit on that. So the research strongly advises against using screen time as a reward or punishment for unrelated behavior. But for many parents, it's the most effective leverage that they actually have.
Totally.
So is it really bad to say if you don't clean your room, you lose your tablet time or iPad time? What's the long-term risk we're not seeing in that moment? Which you kind of alluded to, that they're not going to be prepared, but maybe you could go deeper into that.
I literally hear this from clients all the time, and I have for years. Like, even before, even maybe 8, 9 years ago, I was hearing this from clients before screens were as common as they are. I was hearing from clients that it's okay, when they were younger and they didn't clean their room, I would just say, you don't get iPad time then, right? And then they'd be so motivated to get iPad time that they'd clean their room. Now they're 12, and I say, if you don't clean your room, no iPad time. They don't care. They're almost stronger than me. They'll just go take the iPad and sneak it and play it in their room for an hour. And now I'm pissed off at them because they didn't clean the room and they snuck the iPad. So I think the problem with using these types of things is that they appear to work in the moment, but it's not long-term, because you can't keep using that kind of discipline as they get older, right? So then you become without a plan as they get older, and they've now been programmed to learn that I only do these hard things when there's this reward at the end.
They have no internal reward system. It's all based on someone's going to give me something to do this thing.
Exactly. I would rather teach my children to clean their room, because when your room is clean, you are able to see your toys, you know where they are. It's easier to sleep when you have a clean room, right? And when they're younger, I know developmentally, my child can't just go into her room and start cleaning it by herself, right? She's going to need some help. You've been helping our oldest with this, right? They're going to need some help. They're going to need to learn how to clean their room. But then when they have that satisfaction of a clean room, I want to narrate that for them. I want them to start to understand how that feels, so that they're motivated internally to want to continue cleaning their room, right?
Yeah.
And then you're going to build, and it might not happen right away. For me, my mom did that. It didn't happen until my 20s that I was actually, I want to make my bed every day. I like how it feels.
Yeah.
It took a really long time, but using an iPad or screens always as a reward or punishment, it's just not a long-term plan. And that's why I don't like it for parents. And I do see it backfiring, especially in those tween years. I hear about it all the time.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's, they're getting too big to do what you used to do when they were little, if you were using more punitive methods, right?
And then they use it against you, right? Because it's And I feel like even if you use threats or bribes or whatever, your kids will start to threaten you and bribe you, and they learn from that. So I don't know. I just want parents to use methods that are long term.
That's 100% what I did. It was all used against me, and I learned pretty early on that I could use it back. What about when other families' rules seem, from your perspective or our perspective, genuinely unsafe or unhealthy? How do you explain to your child why you have a different rule without passing judgment on your child's friends or their parents? Because that could be very easily done too.
So easy. And then that comes back to our value of gossip or talking badly about people, which is really important to me to not do, right? And sometimes it could be so easy to be like, yeah, of course. Well, they all let their kids do X, Y, and Z, and that's not how we do things around here. and we're nothing like that family, you know, and like almost like a holier than thou kind of personality. And I don't want that for our kids. I try and keep it really basic. Like, that's their family. That's what their parents are comfortable with. It's just different in our house. Everyone has different rules. And here's why we feel this way. I just try and keep it really simple without like over explaining or trying to make us seem better than another family. Cause like truly we don't know the ins and outs of all these families, right? Like, you don't know why one parent lets their kids play this game. Maybe there's more going on in the house and they want their kids to have that distraction, or like we don't know the inner workings of other families. So I don't feel like I can ever talk about that to our kids in a way that aligns with my values. So I just try and keep it like, yep, that's what they do. Here's what we do. Let's talk about our family.
Okay, but what if, I feel like that's fair if it's just like some random friend from school, but what if it's a close friend of one of our kids, right? And you actually do kind of know what's going on. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think your way of explaining it makes a ton of sense then.
Right.
Because you actually do know the inner workings, and we maybe do completely disagree with what's going on.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's different than just like a random friend at school.
Yeah, if it's like some random person that you have no idea anything about their family really, and it's just their friends at school, they hang out, I think that's one thing. But if it's people that you actually know, I think that's a more likely scenario because, well, maybe for us, it's more likely just because our kids are friends with our friends' kids.
Yeah, and I think the reason I was explaining it that way is because I know for a lot of parents, their kids are mostly just friends with their friends from school, right? Mm-hmm. And so for most parents, I think they don't necessarily know the inner workings of
maybe
their
this is a
kids'
small
friends'
town
lives,
thing, the
right?
way I'm talking. Like, we know a lot of people.
We're from a small town, so we do know.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm curious, how would you have that conversation?
Good question. I mean, the last conversation that I had with our oldest was about phones and screen use. Mm-hmm. We probably talked about it for a good hour. Mm. And I explained why she's likely going to be the last person in her class that actually has a phone, because she kind of wants one. I mean, she sees us on it. Whether we're good examples of it or not, we'll talk about it in another episode. But I just explained the reasoning for why. And I kept it more about why we made that choice for our family and our kids, and why we think that that's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. And then I just asked her if she had any questions about those reasons. And she, honestly, we talked about it for a good hour outside, just on our back deck. So, I mean, in most situations, that's probably what I would do. Mm-hmm. Now, she is insightful enough to be like, well, that's not what they do. So is that not really a good thing?
Right. And so how'd you navigate that?
The only thing I can think of is like bedtime, right? Like the time that we say our kids have to go to bed, which over the summer has been different. But in general, our kids go to bed earlier than most people. And I just outlined the reasons why. And I also say I know that it's best for you because we can see it in how you act the next day and how your sisters act the next day. And when we've tried to do bedtimes that are different, you've acted completely different. Mm-hmm. So again, I don't know. I still try and bring it back to like, this is why we do things and we do it. Because I mean, we've told our kids our main goal as parents is to raise you to be good people and to keep you safe. Mm-hmm. So I say the reason why we're doing this is really to keep you safe and to help raise you up in the best way we know how.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's really similar to what I was saying. Like, it doesn't sound like you got into the other family's dynamics or why.
No, I would try and steer clear of that, honestly. Yeah. Unless she's asking specifically about the dynamics. But again, it's more from, I would never try and pass judgment in the way I speak about anyone else, really.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's important to remember as parents. It's like, we want to teach our kids that our expectations and rules might be different. And that doesn't mean that we're like hating on other families, right? I think that is part of teaching our kids kindness and respect to others, is not talking bad about other families, but you can name when things are different. Like, I think that's okay.
Okay, to wrap things up, I have 2 final questions for you. The research that I found explained that our rules are really a long-term investment in building resilience, self-concept, so an understanding of oneself, and critical thinking. So for a parent who's listening, who's exhausted and just wants their kid to put their shoes on, what's the one big idea you want them to hold on to from our conversation today?
It's a really great question.
And it's a realistic one, because we sometimes have that with our kids too.
I think when it comes to things like helping your kids put on their shoes or making sure they don't run to the road, right? And because that's a rule, we don't run to the road, but kids are going to do it anyway. I think we need to remember that we do need to be the leader that our children are craving in these situations. And so just because your child doesn't want to put on their shoes or they do want to run to the road, right, doesn't mean we just let them do whatever it is that they want. And children are more likely to listen to our leadership and trust our leadership when we show them that we see them, we hear them, and that we feel confident in the rules that we're putting in place. I think one of the things that parents often do that make children not trust their leadership is appear to be very not confident in the rules or the boundaries that they're putting into place. And when we constantly change our rules or constantly change our boundaries, like I'll give you an example, like if your child doesn't want to put their shoes on to get out the door, and some mornings you're like, fine, I don't care. Like, just wear your socks in the car then, whatever. And then the next morning you're like, you have to put on your shoes, and you get super angry at them. And then the next morning you're like, fine, no shoes. Like, in every single morning, the boundary's changing. Your child's not learning how to trust your leadership. They're learning that when they push back super hard, you'll change your boundary, and they don't know which boundary that they're going to expect that day. Right. So I think for things like putting on shoes, if that is the expectation that we leave the house with shoes on, we be curious, right? Like, why don't they want to wear shoes? We have a very sensitive child who there's certain shoes she just can't wear because just for sensory reasons, right? And that's being a good leader too, is being curious. Like, why don't they want to wear the shoes? Or
for us, we've had it where the kids' shoe sizes,
or the shoes are too small.
Right? And we've had to hit 4 different sizes in the same year because their feet are growing that fast.
Yeah, so being a good leader isn't just like wear the shoes and get over it. It's, well, why don't you want to wear the shoes? Okay, so let's say everything is fine. No sensory issues with the shoes. The shoes fit just right. They just are pushing on your boundary, right? Okay, so why do they push on this boundary every morning? Well, maybe they don't know what to expect. They don't know if they're going to wear socks in the car today, or they don't know, right?
They don't want to go to preschool.
They don't want to go to preschool, right? So being a good leader isn't just about restating rules over and over, but it is about being curious, seeking to understand why your child's pushing back so hard, and having those like sturdy boundaries that your child can learn to rely on. Right? Like things like brushing the teeth at bedtime. If you change your mind every night, and like some nights they don't have to brush their teeth and some nights they do, and your child doesn't really know which version of you they're going to get at bedtime, they're going to push back simply because they just don't know what to trust or what to fall back on. So there is a piece of providing that sturdy leadership that's like, hey, tonight I'm going to help you get your shoes on, right? We have our shoes on before we go to the car. That's the rule. And if the shoes don't fit, okay, well, let's get you another pair of shoes. Or if they're not comfortable, let's get you another pair of shoes. But this is the rule. And like holding to that, I think your children will learn to trust that, and they'll learn to put their shoes on because they know that that's the rule. So that's like a long-winded answer of saying like being a good leader is so much more than just having rules. There's the curiosity piece matters.
The critical thinking piece.
The critical thinking piece, yes.
Okay, final question. A common fear for parents, and I think this is why a lot of parents have a hard time setting those kinds of rules, is that having the stricter rules than other families will make their child feel like an outsider or resent them.
Yep.
So what would you say to that parent to reassure them?
Well, I think 2 things are true. If you have really strict rules and you don't have the relationship, your child definitely could start to resent you, right? It's the relationship that you have with your child that we talked about through this whole episode that is going to be what helps them understand why you have that rule in place, right? If it's just rules without showing your child that you still want to hear from them, that their concerns matter, that they have a place where they belong in your family, your child's going to go search for that belonging to be seen and heard elsewhere, right? Mm-hmm. Probably from their friends who are going to be like, yeah, your parents suck, you know? And they're going to be like, okay, I'm validated here.
Yeah.
Right? Do you want your child to be validated by you, or do you want them to be validated by their peers? And so for me, yes, some of our rules might be stricter. Our kids might not have phones till after their other friends. And these are going to be conversations that we have. Our children are going to know they have a place for belonging in the home. Our children are going to still have their social needs met because we're going to make sure that they have play dates and friends over and all of these things, right? Facilitate that for our kids. They're going to feel heard and seen. And so, yes, we can have strict rules. And when paired with the relationship, it makes a child feel safe.
Yeah.
And I think the alternative of having no rules and your child gets to do anything that they want actually makes your child feel very unsafe. They might appear to be happy, but when a child has full control over whatever they do and see and play and whatever, their brains just can't handle that. They're too immature. Like their brains aren't developed enough to think logically or to do reasonable things, right? So you're going to get your child pushing back on you with everything. They're going to appear to be the bossy leader of your house. That this is all, to me, like they're craving someone to lead them, to guide them. So thinking about that too, it's like, it's actually not better for your child for them to have the last say on everything in your house.
I think that was a great place to end.
I think so too.
I had a lot more questions, but we're already over an hour, so boom. I figured we should probably
we should wrap this
move
up
along so people actually want to listen to the whole thing.
Yeah, and if you have questions about this, I feel like it's a great nuanced topic and one that we could always come back to.
Yeah. Thanks for listening today, and hope you enjoyed this episode and come back for the next one.
Talk to you soon. Hey, thank you so much for being here and listening to this episode today. It means the world to us to have you here. If this conversation was helpful for you, it would mean a lot if you could like and subscribe. That just shows us if the conversation is meaningful and helpful and helps it get out to more people. Also, I just wanted to let you know that every week we have a new episode drop. And if you want to be notified when that happens, just hit the little bell icon. Again, thank you so much for being here, and we will talk to you again next week.